Excellency Mr. George Rebelo Pinto CHIKOTI to give his opening remarks of this very important occasion for the group. Your Excellency, Mr. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oliveira. Your Excellency, Mr. Samuel Utlule, Ambassador of the Republic of Botswana, Chairperson of the OACPS Subcommittee on Investment and Private Sector. Madam Mantla Sonkaloba, Chief Executive Officer of the Botswana Export and Manufacturers Association and Interim Chair of the Board of Directors of the OACPS Business Forum. Distinguished ambassadors, representatives of the OACPS private sector, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a very important date for the OACPS. Less than 2 years since the coming into force of the revised Georgetown Agreement, which is the constitutive act of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. And thanks to the efforts of the OACPS private sector representatives gathered here, we will tonight officially launch the Business Forum of Organization. This forum is an important constitutive organ foreseen under the Georgetown Agreement, with a mandate to foster the active involvement of the private sector as a driving force in the creation of a market-driven economy. OACPS leaders have always recognized the crucial social economic role played by our private sector, and in particular, our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in fostering the sustainable development of our countries by providing decent jobs, creating wealth, generating government revenue, and driving foreign exchange. However, until today, we have been unable to formalize the platform through the OACPS political leaders could engage with private sector in a constructive manner via an open and inclusive public-private sector dialogue. According to the African Development Bank, the private sector generates 2/3 of Africa's investment, 3/4 of its economic output, and 9/10 of its formal and informal employment. The Caribbean statistics show that the regional private sector represents 70% of jobs, while SMEs contribute about 40% to the region's GDP. Private sector firms account for an increasing share of government revenue, while entrepreneurship serves as social safety for net women and youth. According to the International Finance Corporation, in the Pacific, the majority of firms are micro enterprises, representing between 65% and 75%, followed by small enterprises with 20% and medium-sized enterprises accounting for between 5 to 10% of the total enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2014, the OACPS adopted its private sector development strategy, which recognized the central role of the private sector in promoting sustainable economic development, creating jobs, fostering social, cultural, and economic inclusion, and promoting overall peace and prosperity in our countries and regions. The same year, the OACPS and the European Union adopted their joint private sector development strategy, which seeks to encourage the creation and growth of a more competitive, resilient, and responsible business sector. This strategy is based on 4 pillars. Pillar 1, promoting a policy and a regulatory framework conducive to the emergence of a competitive local and regional private sector. This is focused on improving regional policies and harmonizing regulations via an inclusive approach based on public-private dialogue at country and regional level. Pillar 2, strengthening key national and regional private sector support institutions, such as chambers of commerce, training institutes, laboratories, producer associations, and research and innovation centers. These provide technical assistance and business development services, fostering research, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and enhancing the quality and competitiveness of producers and services supplied by OACPS MSMEs to local, regional, and international markets. Pillar 3, enhancing microfinance support by fostering financial inclusion via a holistic approach. Under this pillar, constraints at macro, meso, and micro levels are targeted with a view to foster financial inclusion in favor of household welfare and enterprise competitiveness. Pillar 4, catalyzing private investments and commercial finance via blending mechanisms. To improve access to finance for our MSMEs and encourage private investments through risk-sharing mechanisms and guarantee schemes. Ladies and gentlemen, in adopting the referred joint framework, the OACPS and the EU agreed to dedicate an overall budget of over 600 million euros, which has been distributed via some 20 programs and instruments implemented with a wide variety of development partners and covering the aforementioned 4 pillars, which I just outlined. These joint actions also led to the establishment of an OACPS EU private sector dialogue platform, which is being facilitated by Business ACP. Notwithstanding the other responsibilities in terms of experience sharing or dissemination of good practices, the OACPS Business Forum must play a leading role to enable our private sector to contribute to the formulation and implementation of private sector development policies and trade negotiations positions to be pursued by the OACPS on the international scene, including at the World Trade Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, the OACPS Secretariat is committed to supporting you in your first steps, including through technical assistance to be provided by the OACPS and the European Union through Business ACP. Moreover, we also commit ourselves to fully respect the decision-making autonomy and independence of the OACPS Business Forum, with a view of following it to become an independent and a highly respected member of the OACPS family. I sincerely wish you success in this very important, challenging endeavor. Thank you very much for your attention.